Yo, what's up, you guys? This week I wanted to show you something that you've seen on this channel plenty of times before, but I wanted to go into why I actually like this thing. So we're talking about the Canon A1. I'm going to show you just a couple of things like as far as features that I really like about it and the reason why I think it might be the best pickup for somebody that's looking to get into film photography. So if that interests you, if you're looking for a new camera or if you're looking to get into film, I wanted to show you the reason why I chose this as one of my first film cameras. I think you'll like truly appreciate some of the same things. So if that interests you, stick around and we'll talk about it. Okay, so thanks for sticking around. Let's talk about the Canon A1 and why you should think about getting something like this or this specifically when you're trying to get into film photography, because there are three major features to this camera that I find really helpful, especially when I started getting into it, and I want to give them to you. So this list isn't going to be fully encompassing. It doesn't have every feature, but just for the basics, we have a 35mm camera, fully manual, other than the battery, which allows you to use the onboard light meter. The lens that I have here is a 50-1.8, and that's typically what you find these with, but you can find them with other things like a 24, 28, and a 35, and I believe there's an 85, but the mount is actually an FD mount. It is the mount that Canon put out before the EF glass that you see now. So essentially those are the basics, but let's talk about the three main things as far as this camera goes for you as a beginner looking to get into film that I really think are going to help you out. So let's talk about number one. Okay, so the first thing we're talking about is the fact that what we see is what we get with this style of camera. Now, this is an SLR camera, so essentially what we see is what we get. So light enters through the lens, hits our mirror, is reversed by hitting a prism in the top of the camera, and then we see the viewfinder in the back. So we get to see the image that we're taking really in real time through the viewfinder in the back with an SLR camera. So what's really great is the fact that with SLR, like I said, we get that real-time viewing, and also we're looking directly through the lens. Both of these are huge for composition, and that's why I would put it as number one on my list, because composition is something that's very important with photography, and film photography is very unforgiving in the fact that like you can only take it once and you don't really get to see it after the fact. So for me, I like the SLR style, and why I think it's great for beginners is the fact that you're getting to see what you're trying to do while you're doing it, and you get it as close to real life as possible. So unlike the rangefinder where you end up with a window that's kind of off to the left, you're not actually looking through the lens, and then on top of that you see beyond your composition. So that's something to think about with that style of camera, but for SLRs, that's why this is number one on my list. But let's talk about number two. Okay, so let's talk about number two and the fact that we have a camera that is a 35mm camera, and it's also a lens system that allows us to interchange these lenses. So that is essentially my second point, is the fact that we have a lens system that is interchangeable. So a lot of the times when we see 35mm cameras, we see them as point and shoots because that's what our parents used back in the day at the local barbecue or whatever. And the fact that those were like really cool and that's all good and well is that's dope or whatever. But the fact that those were simple point and shoots is not like what we're talking about here. This is something that you could actually grow with over film photography when you're trying to do 35mm. And the reason with that is because you have that mount to change whatever it is you want. So with this one, a lot of the times you find this package, you find this camera specifically with this lens. This is a 50-1.8. And it's been really awesome for me for a long time. But one thing that I noticed is like as I grew as a photographer and as I grew into different interests of photography, some of the things that I like doing didn't really suit the 50mm as well. So something that I like doing is like I like doing street photography and doing candids and stuff. So something for that, I like to shoot wider. So that's why I would pick like the 35mm after the fact. And that's what I did. I essentially grew out of the 50 and into a 35. And then from there, I went into portrait photography. So I grew out of the 35 into an 85. So that's just something to think about when you get these style of cameras. And if you get the Canon A1 specifically, is the fact that you get the ability to change your gear with your skill level or your gear with your interest. That's huge for me as far as digital photography goes. So it would be the exact same as far as film goes. So it's something to think about. Well, let's talk about number three. So for number three, we're talking about the ability to control the camera. So we're going to get into a couple of these little features right here, and I'm going to show you a couple of close-ups because I want to show you just how amazing your controllability is when you're talking about this camera. When we're talking about the Canon A1, it's a great all-arounder, so I want to show you some of these features that are here labeled that I think you'll really appreciate when you're getting into film. Let me show them to you. Okay, so we're going to start from left and go right. or right to left, whichever one is for you. I think it's my left to your right, whatever. So we have the ISO dial, and what's really great about this is where you're actually setting your exposure levels. This is what's going to help you do that based on your film choice. But usually what you have with this, more than like most cases, is you have a dial which is super difficult to operate a lot of the times. However, with this one, based on this little dial that's right here, this is actually super easy. So if you push this in, you can spin the dial however you need to, and you can see that it actually, if I could do this backwards, it spins pretty easy. Obviously, I do it better when I'm looking at it. But now you have the dial, which is over here on this side. So based on that, I really like that feature alone. Now, the second thing that we move over with is the fact that this is where the money is. All of these features right here are worth every penny. And that's because you end up with something where you actually have a camera that is functional in different areas. So essentially, if you look at it right there, you're seeing all the digits. You see all of your, basically your shutter speeds is what this is, and a little indicator, which is that little white line. Now, if we adjust that and we take it over some, we can actually adjust it just like that, and now it is yellow. Hopefully you can see that a little bit. You can see the yellow inside instead of the black and white lines. So this is actually your aperture. So what I did is actually adjusted this little knob that's right here, so you can see it change from an aperture priority to a shutter priority. And just with a little click, it's right next to the shutter button. It's just this little knob right here. So you actually get the ability to adjust from shutter priority and aperture priority if you don't want to shoot a complete manual camera, which a lot of people don't, especially when you're talking about getting into film. This is super awesome. It gives you the ability to shoot things that are a little bit easier than just going full on manual. Wow, that was super difficult to show you through the viewfinder, but hopefully you got to see some of the digits changing as far as like the exposure compensation that it's doing based on your shutter speed, and that I have it in aperture priority. So you got to see some of it changing the shutter speed basically based on the settings that are set here. So hopefully that gives you an idea of like as far as control that you get with this camera. I think it is really like, even though this is really third on my list, it's really probably the most important because of the fact that you have so much control based on those features. But it also means that you don't have to set it completely in manual mode and be afraid to take photos because you're afraid of messing up film. So it gives you that ability to choose something like aperture or shutter priority, where you get to choose just a couple of the 3 points versus having to set it completely and do all of the work, right? So it's very good between like a hobbyist and when you're getting into like actual professional photography, or if you want to move into professional photography, or if you want to do anything in 35mm. I just appreciate having control, but also having those things in as far as priority modes that allow you to kind of just enjoy taking photos. So, and like focus on something else. So I think that's why it's number 3 on my list, honestly. So that's my top 3 on why I think that this camera is so great for anyone getting into film photography. I think it's one that like is just really great for all around photography, whether you're getting into portraits or street photography, candids, you want to do landscapes or architecture. I think that this style of camera, and this camera specifically with the Canon A1, is a really great film photography camera. And 35mm in general, just so you know, usually I do a lot on film. 35mm is great because of versatility and the fact that you get so many shots per roll. So it's really cost efficient. So if you're thinking about cost and the fact that it costs a lot to shoot film, 35mm is your bang for buck. And then beyond that, you have a great camera like accompanied with that. I think this is a great idea, and I hope you will check it out. So if you see it on a shelf somewhere, or you see it online for a decent price, I hope you'll pick it up because I think it'll be worth it. Beyond that, I hope you will leave me all of your comments down below, letting me know anything, any kind of questions or any comments that you have about the camera or film photography in general. I would love to answer them all because I think it would be so much fun to talk just film photography in the comments. Also, if you want to, my links for Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter are down in the description below, so you can find me there on all of the other places if you want to ask me questions there or see any other content as far as TikToks and shorts and stuff like that. I'm all there all the time, so make sure to hit me up. Beyond that, if you want to, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so you get all of the new content when it comes out first. Beyond that, I'm going to hit you with my typical, and I'm going to peace out, and I will see you guys in the next one. I put my lens cap in my cardigan this time, so I have it. So I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Go out and try some, shoot some film this week. Let me know how it goes. Put those comments down below. See you guys.